Hello everyone and welcome to Holistic Health and Harmony. Now we're going to have a discussion tonight about, I was going to say holistic stuff, but we really are. We are going to have a discussion about empathy and
being an empath.
And being an empath.
And what an empath means and why some people become an empath.
And it's something that's quite natural in all of us. Everybody has empathy,
yes.
Okay, but when you are an empath and you are actually feeling situations around you, you're going through a life experience through what somebody else is saying or doing, that really does have a very strong impact on your personal being.
Most certainly, and generally what it can symbolise too is that it has been the reason why you can really be an empath with that person is because you've been through very similar circumstances. So, you know, I can recall several situations, you know, throughout my whole career, and not just as a clairvoyant, but even as a mother, you know. But one I do recall is I went through a period, Carolyn, where I had a lot of people that had, unfortunately and sadly, had miscarriages. And, you know, not to talk about my whole life, but unfortunately I've been down that path myself more than a few times.
Yeah.
And so what I found that when those clients were coming for a session with me, I could truly relate to where they were, how they were feeling, what they were going through, because I had gone through very, very similar.
It's almost like you almost feel like you're reliving or rehashing those emotional or psychological experiences.
Most certainly. I guess the difference for myself going through that process with my clients was I didn't relive it because obviously for me to be a clear channel for my clients, I can't have the emotion attached. I had worked through my own grief and losses of my newborns, children that were to be. So just to give you an understanding, you know, to be an empath, you do have to, I guess, have that experience of having, if not similar, no two people are the same. And I guess we need to make that clear to people. When you're an empath, it doesn't mean you've gone exactly through, because everyone experiences very differently. And emotionally, we all react very differently.
Most definitely.
You know, where one woman might say, okay, well, you know, I understand there was a higher purpose. Another woman may say, this has been devastating to me. And just using the example of what I was speaking about, sorry, it's not the only situation.
No.
So, yeah, an empath really does play quite a key role in anyone's life, to be honest. And I don't think it's just a spiritual thing. I don't think it's just coming to a medium or a clairvoyant or a psychic. I think it's in general life. An empath is a beautiful person to have as a friend and as somebody you can you know, connect with.
And that really comes back to boundaries as well, because an empath is super sensitive. For me, the empathic side of myself started to evolve. I was always super sensitive anyway, but for me it was, if somebody talked of a sad story, I would actually cry. I could feel the lump in my throat. I could feel the sadness. I could feel the grief. All of those things. And for me, it was like, I used to think, well, you know, I'm such a strong person. You know, I'm here for them. I'm doing what I need to be doing. But at the same time, I really felt what they were feeling. So, you know, part of being an empath is also being sympathetic to somebody, but also really working on your boundaries, because you do not want to, you know, put yourself into those positions where you have to ride the highs and lows. And you are sensitive. You're sensitive to your environment. You're sensitive to what people think and say. You're picking up on other people's energy. You know, there's lots of things that it will be setting you off during that period of time.
And for the person that doesn't really understand what an empath is, it is the best way to describe it in a simple form, I feel, if I'm wrong, please quote me, is that you're very sensitive to other people's feelings, other people's pains, other people's experiences. So I call it, as I would call it, you're a sensitive soul, okay? When we're sensitive, anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, we become a lot more open to things that someone who's a little bit more, let's say, not as sensitive. Doesn't mean they're insensitive. It just means that they've got a higher tolerance, or they've got very bigger boundaries. You know, when you're an empath, it is something that has to be nurtured, not only from, let's say, a client point of view, but also from you as the empath. You've got to be able to know what you can be a part of, and how what your role is within that situation.
And another classic example, if I was to, if Rayleen was to say that she had an aching knee, an empath would actually feel the aching knee within themselves. It's, you know, it's almost like as if it's a transference that happens.
Most certainly. And the difference between being an empath and having sympathy is that there's a part of you that goes, oh, that's sorry, I feel sorry for you, but you're not actually feeling it.
You're not
and
really
that's where the
feeling
empath will feel it and also feel that sense of sorrow for you, because they know exactly what you're going through. They know the pain that you're feeling. They know the anxiousness. They know the grief. They know whatever it is, you know, that you're experiencing in that moment. But sympathy and empathy, two different things.
Most definitely. And you may find that there are different times, like, just to give you a little bit of a quick example, have you ever watched quite a horrific movie and sat on the edge of your seat and just been high tension, okay, because you can actually feel that energy of whatever's happening, and you know you're preempting what's going to be going on? That's a little bit, well, you know, that's a little bit like, oh my God. But that is a little bit, you know, not taking away from empaths, that is a little bit from, you know, like 1% of how they feel. So imagine how you are when you're sitting in a movie theater and you're just about seeing the climax of the movie come together, and somebody's running down the hallway, you know, trying to get away from wherever they're getting, and you're getting anxious and anxious and anxious. Same type of thing that happens with an empath. So whatever you're feeling, they're actually experiencing at the same time. They understand it on a very, very deep level.
So I guess some questions that I'd like to ask you is, you know, some people say to me, why am I feeling like this? What is that called? And for some people, I like to, and my clients will, you know, can definitely vouch for this, is I like to say you're a super sensitive soul. Now, what I mean by that is, in a sense, I'm saying you're an empath. So, you know, I guess some people out there who may have these experiences where they do feel a lot of sorrow and they do feel a lot of physical pain, you know, maybe it's a good thing for you to sit down and go, okay, ask your higher self, am I an empath?
Yeah.
Am I one of these people that really, you know, because I've gone through that situation, can I really relate to that? Is that something, am I feeling this pain because I've had similar circumstances? So really recognize whether or not you are the empath, and, you know, or are you just a sensitive person, or are you just sympathetic? You know, sometimes to be able to define and really understand what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, instead of just palming it off and saying, hey, I'm psychic, or oh, hey, I'm sensitive, you may be an empath. And when you can actually put clarification to something that you've experienced for a long time, it really can bring a lot more clarity further up the track for you. So, you know, if you feel you are an empath, maybe do a checklist. Can I relate to most things that are said to me that are things that I've experienced? Or when I listen to somebody else's grief or sorrow or sadness, is it because I'm feeling sympathy? You know, really do a little bit of exploring on that deeper level to find out whether or not you are. And if you are, that's wonderful.
Most
you
definitely.
just need to know how to work with it.
Most definitely. And the vulnerability, that's another thing that an empath actually does have, is you're emotionally and physically and mentally vulnerable. You tend to find that it's almost like your heart chakra is so wide open in the chest that you take everything in. You take it actually to heart. So, you know, if somebody doesn't like you, it's almost like as if you feel that tenfold, rather than just being something just where normally we just skim over and go, okay, they don't like me, or, you know, I'm a little bit different.
Exactly. So,
you know, with an
empath, amplified.
Most definitely, 10 times.
You feel like everything is amplified. So even down to someone not liking you, or you know, someone being disappointed in you, it may be that you feel that tenfold. And you know, this is why it's so important to find out what you play, what role you play in certain things. So if you are sensitive or you are an empath, are you an empath, or are you sympathetic, or are you compassionate? What is it what role do you play?
Most definitely.
So therefore you don't beat yourself up, and you can kind of like really work with how to better strengthen yourself, even if you are an empath, not to take on the board personally, and not to take personally what you're experiencing. And that is a real big point, is not to grab it and go, oh my gosh, you know, this is mine. Because when we're an empath, we are there, and we are there in that every moment, because we totally understand, but we're not responsible for what happens in that person or that soul's life. So it's really important to be able to have that cut-off point once you've connected, once you've done what you need to do with that person. It doesn't mean you distance yourself or take away from what you're giving. It just means that you know that, okay, this is where I feel, I understand. And in that moment of doing that with that person, you've already done what you needed to do. So you don't need to do anything else except for look after yourself after the fact.
And the other, classic examples is that some people at certain age groups in their life, they feel like they're going through a period of transition because you're more desensitized to your life. So you tend to find that there's more boxes of tissues, and people put it down to hormones, and people put it down to a lot of things. But really what's happening is that you're opening up another level within yourself, and you're becoming a little bit more emotionally available or a little bit more emotionally vulnerable. And you may be finding that, for instance, you may watch a movie and you find that you cry, and you cry at ads or you cry at songs,
Well, I'm a bit of a sucker.
Yeah, that's it, yeah, most definitely. And, anything that's kind of like, I'm all for fairness and for the person. And, there's some particular songs that really really lift me up, but there are some movies that I could just really sit there and just understand the loss of a child, like you said, or that actual valor of being able to achieve a goal that you've set out to do, and the absolute feeling that is within inside. But there's happy tears, these aren't sad tears at all. So this is about, that's what an empath does. You tap into the energy of the time. It's inside you. It's inside your DNA, but it brings out the emotions.
Yeah. And I guess once again, it comes back to that point. Once in that situation, or once you've been in that moment, it's really important as an empath, if you recognize that you are an empath, is not to carry it. You can't carry it, because the truth is it's only going to be detrimental, because it can also bring up, past issues, because you've been so empathic with this person. It can bring up your old issues, and if they weren't resolved, which most people resolve them, but if they weren't resolved, you don't want to have to rehash something that has already been a part of your life and now no longer serves it. So it's an amazing thing, isn't it, when you think about it? And I've met so many people, not even clients, just people I've met day-to-day life, that are extremely empathic, and I think it's beautiful. And until they get to a point of acknowledging it, or until they understand that they're not responsible, and that's a big thing too. Being an empath doesn't make you responsible for everybody. It just makes you responsible for how you deal with things, and how you disconnect at the end of whatever moment that you're in with a person.
So how would you suggest that an empath, what protocol, what would they need to put into place to give themselves that sense of protection, and to give themselves that sense of cleanse? What would you suggest?
It's not even really a sense of protection, to be honest, Carolyn. I feel that, if anything, it would be just acknowledgement. So in that moment, if you're talking to somebody who's just broken up with their partner of 20 years, and they feel like life's really, and you've gone through that, 10 years ago or 3 years ago, it's about acknowledging that you can so relate to that person, that you can so relate to them, that you feel their pain. But after the fact, after you've had your cup of coffee and maybe walked out the door and said, all the best, it's about going, maybe acknowledging within yourself, that was a really nice moment to be able to help that person through that hard time, and acknowledge the gratitude of how you've come through that. So I guess the better way to disconnect from it and not to have it replaying in your own life is to acknowledge it, one, and to then be grateful to be able to help somebody else through that circumstance that you've already been through. And therefore, in an instant, you kind of like cut that energy, because you're not ignoring what you experienced with that person, and you're not ignoring what you experienced in your past, but your experience and what you're letting go of is that in that moment, that was very important to acknowledge that person wholly and solely. That now it's time to move forward as you always have.
So empath, you feel that they're better to trying to recognise what they're doing, but also to be able to acknowledge that, yes, in this moment, Auntie or my best friend needs this advice, because I've been there and I've done that and I understand it and I know her pain. And then when you walk out the door and you go back into your own normal life,
to, you know, not sit back and reflect on, oh, wow, that was a hard day. You know, she's going through a hard time. I remember. It's not about you going back to a past memory. It's about you going, wow, how nice is it for me to be able to acknowledge what you've gone through, because I've been there. And, you know, and then say, thank you your higher self, thank your spirit guides, thank, you know, you may have somebody specifically you want to thank, but you may not. And just thank yourself for being able to be in that moment and totally connected with that soul and go, okay, you know, thank you, I acknowledge, and I'm so grateful that I could help this person in this moment. And therefore, like I say, you don't hold on to old energy. You don't have to relive the past because of your empath abilities. Yeah.
So what I guess my question was, you know, for some people, they go through a period of time where they don't know how to do that. What other steps could they take to help themselves through? So would it be that they could use protection or grounding?
Grounding's a wonderful thing. Grounding's a wonderful thing, most certainly. And I would suggest to anyone in any situation, whether it be a spiritual situation with somebody or whether it be just with a family member, you're having a really hard time, there might have been a major argument, you know, and your mind's ticking over, you're overanalyzing stuff, you know, really get into a space where you go, okay, and acknowledge your body needs to be grounded. And grounding can be done in many different ways.
Yes.
You know, that to me, how I ground myself, just to give a bit of an example, is if, you know, I've had a big night or a big day, you know, working with clients that have had a lot of issues, and not always sad issues, but a lot of things going on, I tend to like to physically get into things. So I might do my housework more, or I might, you know, just go outside and sit under a tree, or just really connect with Mother Nature. Everyone will have different ways and forms of grounding.
Most
and
definitely.
Yeah, it's a good question. So grounding is a wonderful tool. Also, just really coming back to self. And what I would call it, another form of coming back to self, is becoming centered again. And, you know, there are techniques that you can use. You know, you can dust off the aura. You know, you've heard of, you know, I don't know if you, yeah, I'm sure you have, but there's different techniques. Sorry.
Of course I have.
Of course. But, you know, there's different ways of dusting. And excuse me, you're seeing me do some weird things, but, you know, dust off your aura. You know, if you've left a situation that was very emotional, very hard, very, you know, taxing, and I say that in a loving way, taxing on your aura because you've been so empathetic, empathetic, you know, dust off your aura, you know, do a little bit of grounding, do a little bit of I love thee, and, you know, really bring yourself back to your center. There's another thing I'll do in front of the camera, which is a really wonderful grounding tool, and it brings you back to your own energy, and I have to do it in front of you, sorry, Carolyn, is, you know, I call this, and this it's called a prayer position. Now, you can't see very good, but I'm going to put my two hands closed like this to my chest, and when you do this, oh, thank you, sweetie, when you do this, this allows you, one, to bring your energy back to your center. And that's what we need to do often. This can be used anytime, anywhere, for whatever reason. So it's not, but just because we're talking about grounding and we're talking about techniques to bring us back after we've used our empath skills, that is a perfect tool to say, here I am, I love thee, I'm in this moment and I'm with me. And even like, as you can see, I hold my hands close together, but I also hold them close to my physical body. So therefore, I'm bringing my energy back to awareness. So, yeah, I'm sure that will be of assistance to people when it comes to it.
Well, I've noticed that a lot of children are quite empathetic.
Most certainly,
you know,
especially younger ones now.
Most definitely. And I put them down to sensitive. So I say that, you know, you're sensitive to your environment, you're sensitive to your diet, you're sensitive to what's going on. And, you know, a lot of the times you tend to find that they're teaching a lot of adults now how to actually get back into the empathetic, you know, that energy.
Energy, yes.
Yeah, rather than kind of, because we've all become, not like so much, a lot of us, but a majority have become quite logic, quite rigid, quite, you know.
And I totally understand that, Carolyn, because there's, when we look at a lot of things, and we're going on a different level here to her, for the person that's just tuned in and doesn't know us and doesn't know how we work. But, you know, when you look at social media, when you look at media alone, you know, we're now exposed to things on, you know, visual things that, you know, are becoming a little bit too, what's the word I want to use? Like, we're becoming, I can't even think of the words,
Is it as in reliant?
Oh,
or
no,
is it
no,
as
no, no,
in...
no. If we go to now, we can see everything all around the world. And we've got a lot of wars going on. And we now see, you can see death as something very normal. And that becomes, when you see that on a screen continuously, you become desensitized. So we're now exposed to things that we once wasn't, maybe 20 or 30 years ago. You know, to see a dead body on a TV 20 or 30 years ago was extremely distressing. And that's partly why I guess they didn't put that to air. But now we've been, you know, and I'm not pinpointing anyone in particular, but it's the realistic terms of looking at how we are now kind of like, you know, exposed to things that we once weren't. And when we weren't exposed to it, and I kept that sensitivity. So, you know, and as you can see, you know, there's so many different things that can make us become desensitized. And this is where we come into play too. What we're doing here is we're reminding people that, you know, being an empath isn't a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
It's a little blessing in disguise. But there are things that you need as the empath to look after within yourself, so it doesn't become overwhelming, and it doesn't become, you know, unbalancing, and it doesn't become something that, you know, just overrides you. You know, there is a balance in everything that you should do, and yeah.
So talk about your experiences. What have you experienced as an empath? Do you feel that you have empathic, you know,
abilities?
Abilities, most definitely. What's been going on? Are you feeling vulnerable? You know, what have you had happen that has brought that to your attention? Do you find that you cry at a drop of the hat? Do you feel fearful? Do you get anxiety? You know, is it not your anxiety, it's somebody else's? If somebody says a certain word, do you actually bring that into your body? Yeah, that's exactly right. We would like to know. Talk to us. Let us know what's going on, okay? Listen carefully to your energy, to your body, to what's happening, okay? And do some research as well.
Most
you know, really get in there, because knowledge is the key, okay? It's very much important for you to be able to do that. For you, then you find that you're able to better understand yourself, understand, you know, what
others
you've been going through,
most
why. Definitely, and why you're taking this on.
Mm.
So you get some really great, you know, information, some great protection, you know, better understanding, all of the things that are very, very
and
important.
And we'd love to know how you feel and what your experiences have been, and maybe we can help it, you know, through your interaction with us. Maybe we can help you to understand, we're not the judges of that, but you, in talking to us or discussing it with us, it may be something that we can help you, and that may be that little key that's going to help you go, wow, I'm sympathetic, but I'm not empathic. Or I am empathic, but I'm also, you know, sympathetic.
Sympathetic,
you know, there can be the two.
There can be,
and that's what I call too much.
Yeah, that's so, exactly
you know, let's work it out. You know, let us know. You know, we're on Facebook, guys. You know, it's Carolyn, Flynn, and Rayleen, Kable. But we will do a little bit of a talk back. You know, we like to share these, not just to share with you, but to also interact with you. So we hope you've enjoyed tonight's talk on Empath, and we do look forward to talking to you very soon in the near future.
Most definitely. Now, Cosy hugs from me.
Yeah, the Cosy ones, and a namaste too for you, not for me.